All right, folks, we move on and smile this morning. Ever since various COVID-19 vaccines hit the market, we've been warned against mixing them. But one public health specialist, Dr. Alveston Bailey, is urging the Ministry of Health and Wellness to offer AstraZeneca doses to persons waiting for their second Pfizer shot. I think I remember I don't know if she's a former now, but Angela Merkel, who long enough had a mix for a different one from the second one. But why this recommendation? Dr. Bailey is with us now. Good morning, sir. Welcome once again to Smile Jamaica. I hope you're well, sir.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm very well and looking forward to having this discussion.
Sir, take me back to, I think it was 60,000 doses of AstraZeneca that we had to get rid of. Remind me why that happened, and then we can come into the present discussion. Why that happened?
Okay. Jamaica is always dependent on donations from our partners overseas to assist us with our vaccination program. And the unfortunate reality is that whenever they send vaccines to us, they're usually either almost expired or near to be expired. And that is based on the presumption that we'll be able to get the jabs into arms as quickly as possible because Jamaicans are essentially now very poorly vaccinated. At the time when we had the first set from AstraZeneca, we were only about 6% vaccinated. At this point in time, we're roughly between 11 to 12% vaccinated. Therefore, we're way below the anticipated 65% that is required for us to achieve a semblance of herd immunity. What happened at the time was that despite the government's best effort to encourage Jamaicans to take up the vaccine, it fell on deaf ears. And so they had to dispose of the vaccines, which was a tremendous waste and a tremendous loss for good medication that, in my opinion, could have been used. With the impending arrival of the end of the month, the government anticipates that if all the vaccines that are now in stock are not used, we might face the unfortunate reality of having to dump almost 200,000 AstraZeneca vaccines, which would translate into almost $1 billion.
Wow.
That must not be allowed to happen because it's going to send a wrong signal to our partners, and we cannot allow to waste vaccines when most of our populations are unvaccinated. And the only solution, despite what any others say, to this pandemic is if we all get vaccinated. Therefore, my suggestion to the government is that we have to put appropriate measures in place in order to use up these vaccines. So we call this in public health a vaccine shock or vaccine crisis, which means that we have vaccines which might not be used, and yet we have a major problem with respect to vaccine uptake.
Okay. You call this a vaccine crisis of gargantuan, as if crisis wasn't big enough a word, right? You've modified it to say of gargantuan proportions. Doc, do we know if this is happening anywhere else in the world where they're dumping batches? We're looking at dumping 100,000, 200,000 doses at $4 a pop. Is this happening anywhere else?
I actually watch COVID religiously, and I can't think of any other country that is faced with this dilemma. The reason for this really, is because there is severe COVID indifference in Jamaica, roughly 38%. Almost 40% of Jamaicans at this point in time do not believe that COVID is a risk. And then we have this high vaccine hesitancy due to massive misinformation from social media. The other thing too that makes this situation a problem is that we gave a significant amount of the Pfizer vaccine to adults in an attempt to vaccinate them along with their children. But the second dose of the Pfizer has not arrived, and the government is not certain when it will arrive. And we do know that one dose of the Pfizer jab does not confer on you more than around 60% of protection. And therefore, since the weeks are rolling by, And Spain, Canada, UK, Germany, and the FDA. Let me repeat, the FDA 2 days ago has endorsed the use of mixing and matching. Therefore, what are we waiting on?
Yeah.
Let us offer the AstraZeneca to those who need it, and that will significantly reduce the amount of wastage, which might take place shortly. I also recommend that those persons who are to get their second jab in November should be called forward to get it. There's absolutely no public health justification for not giving persons the vaccine earlier than the prescribed 8 weeks. Because my family just came from Guyana and they are given the AstraZeneca at 4 weeks. We know that the response will not be as maximal as at 8 weeks, but it is much better, in my opinion, to get the second jab in your arms than to have it going up in smoke in an incinerator.
Dr. Alverston,
Yes,
sorry to jump in, sir. What happens if you miss the time? All right, so they said, I think I heard AstraZeneca 8 to 12 weeks. What happens if you don't get it for 20 weeks? You have to start over and get the 2 again, or you just get the second one? What happens if that happens?
Well, the data shows that the second jab significantly boosts your immune system. When you get the first jab for Pfizer or Moderna, the response is around 65%. When you get the second jab, it goes up to around 95%. The same thing happens to AstraZeneca, where the response goes up to about 85%. And believe me or not, Johnson Johnson has showed that when you get the second jab, their response goes up to almost 90% also. Now, the rationale behind the vaccines is to encourage your body to produce antibodies. The antibodies response is very robust in the first few weeks, but regretfully, and I must advise the listener that regretfully all over the world, after around 9 months, the antibodies begin to wane. And if you only took one jab, your antibodies will wane faster, which is why many countries are now giving boosters. And in fact, that is another point I wanted to make. I took my vaccine in March. In my opinion, my booster should be given to me at any time now. I'm a healthcare worker. I feel vulnerable. I know that my antibodies levels are falling. I do not see any justification why I can't be given a booster early to preserve my antibody levels than to wait until December. If we are experiencing a vaccine shock with vaccines that are about to be expired, my argument is also encourage those who need a booster to come in for their booster. If there is any concern from the government of Jamaica with respect to boosters for those who need it, ask the WHO. The sage, the expert in Jamaica and the Caribbean resides in Jamaica, is Dr. Peter Figueroa. He could tell you, there's no need to ask WHO, ask Peter. He will tell you, and Peter in fact has said emphatically that those who are worried or those who are in the health sector should be offered a booster.
Sorry again to jump in, sir, but I'm not certain if I got the answer about what happens if you miss the timeline for your second one. So you miss it by 5-6 weeks. Do you have to take 2 again, or you just get the second one whenever you can?
The data is evolving. It means that your immune response will start to wane. It will not approach zero. It will start to wane. And therefore, theoretically, the longer you take to get your second dose, the greater risk you have of a breakthrough infection.
Right.
Which is why you need a booster to boost you, to protect you from getting a breakthrough infection. Therefore, for those who have had one shot, you're still protected. But the longer you take to get the second shot, your protection will begin to wane.
Okay.
You're not unprotected, but you need the booster to maintain maximal protection.
Final question, sir. Can the mix and match be anyone? In other words, can I use J&J with Pfizer? Can I use Moderna with AstraZeneca? Or is it specific to just 2 or what?
If anyone listening should go on the FDA website. The FDA only approves Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer. they have not approved AstraZeneca to date. The statement from the FDA is that all vaccines are interchangeable. The studies that were done in Spain, in UK, only use AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna. They have not used Johnson Johnson. But from what I gather from the FDA, Johnson Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer are interchangeable.
Okay.
And so therefore, my recommendation is to look at the data, make an informed decision, and don't waste the vaccine.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Thanks always for speaking with us. God bless you, sir. Look after yourself.
Thank you very much.
Occupational physician and public health specialist, Dr. Alveston Bailey. Yeah.